Humanities Business of the Arts program. And my name is Melvin Whitson, and I work here in community outreach, as well as introduce a couple of people on our side initially. Our Deputy Director, David Markey, and Dwayne Lawson Brown, who also works in communications with me. And then on the other side, I'm just going to introduce Miss Eloise Russo, and I'll just do a little introduction, and then she's going to kind of take it over. And so, again, our Business of the Arts program aims to provide knowledge and skills through resources and workshops. We actually have a focus on fundraising and development, marketing and public relations, as well as legal concerns and entrepreneurship. So these are basically free workshops and seminars that are led by accomplished professionals and subject matter experts. So with that, today, we're going to be talking about leadership coaching and becoming the leader you want to be. So we're very excited to have this esteemed group of trainers here, and I'm going to let Eloise kind of take us into that. And Eloise, please.
Thank you, Melvin, and thank you everyone at the Commission. We're really excited to be here. I'm going to share my screen and get us started. Well, again, it's wonderful to be here. I'm Eloise Rousseau, and I'm a co-founder and coach with Access Coaching Collective. And we're really excited to be here with you today. We've got a lot to cover today, and it'll be a mix of sharing information. If everyone can mute who's not speaking, that would be wonderful, just as kind of like as we get started. And then as other people come in, we'll welcome them as well. Today's workshop will be a mix of sharing information about leadership coaching. You'll also hear directly from clients who've been a part of Access Coaching Collective coaching programs. So you'll get to hear from people directly who are organizational leaders and what coaching has meant for them and the kind of impact that it had. We'll also share a brief coaching demo. Coaching can kind of seem like a vague thing sometimes, and so being able to share a clip from a coaching conversation will really help bring that to life. And then we'll have time for reflection, discussion, and then some Q&A, and then we'll wrap up, like any good coaching conversation, with really clear next steps. So our goal is really for you to deepen your understanding about the possible impacts of coaching, so that you have a clear understanding of if this is something that might be a good fit for you either now, in the near future, or down the line. And with that, I'd love to move to our next steps around what is Access Coaching Collective and who are the three coaches who are going to be facilitating today's workshop. So first, Access Coaching Collective, our mission is to ensure that high quality, equity-centered coaching is accessible to social impact leaders. And we do this in a few different ways, including by partnering with foundations to do work with their grantees, or with organizations to do work with their leaders, and then even working directly with individuals to connect them to a coach. And again, I'm Eloise Rousseau, and prior to becoming a coach, I ran a DC youth development organization called City Kids Wilderness Project, and I did that for about a decade. And my coaching practice is now primarily focused on working with nonprofit leaders. And I have an MBA in nonprofit management. And my particular lens with coaching is using a strengths-based approach. So my training is in positive psychology coaching. And with that, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Levner. Before becoming a coach, I was the co-founder and executive director of Critical Exposure for about 16 years. Critical Exposure teaches DC high school students how to use photography as a tool for advocacy and organizing. After I left CE, I decided to become a coach in the hopes of supporting people whose shoes I had been in. I was trained at Brown in a program called Awareness, Choice, and Transformation, ACT, and co-founded Access Coaching Collective with Eloise in the hopes of being able to connect it with exactly the folks that I was interested in coaching. And my particular focus is on new and emerging leaders, particularly in the nonprofit sector. And I will pass it off to my colleague, Jillian.
Thanks, Adam and Eloise. My name is Jillian Hubbard. It's great to be here with you all. I am an organization development consultant, and I specialize in diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as talent development. I do a number of different things. Alongside coaching, I also do a lot of facilitating, consulting, advising, and partnering with other folks to lead instructional programs. So for me, a lot of my focus with coaching is based on the belief that everyone who comes to coaching has exactly what they need to achieve their wildest aspirations. And so my role is to serve as a mirror, to serve as a partner in helping to facilitate your growth process into realizing those aspirations. All right. So let's start at the beginning here with really what is coaching and how do we define it? So for folks on the call, would love either a raise of a hand. Oops. All right. I'm not sure when I got muted again, but I will I will start over. Um, so wanted to start off with what coaching is. So for folks on the call who I can see, would love to either see a thumbs up, a raise of a hand. For folks who are off camera, maybe you can raise some kind of symbol or give a thumbs up virtually. But I'd love to just see who here has had a coach before or participated in coaching in some way. All right, I see a few hands. Awesome. Okay, great. So a handful of us have participated in coaching, it looks like. I see some more thumbs up. That's awesome. So one thing that you might know is that with coaching, there are a number of different kinds of coaching. There are executive coaches, there's leadership coaches, there are folks who focus more on life holistically, or called life coaches. And so folks may have had very different experiences when it comes to coaching. So for today, we're going to focus on leadership coaching. And when we talk about leadership coaching, we're really talking about a one-on-one process or a group process for any of you who have been involved in group coaching before that helps people become the leaders that they want to be. So primarily when it comes to coaching, we're focusing on our work, our careers, and also there's enough space to focus on our personal well-being. And so coach and clients work together to set goals, to assess their current reality, identify the choices that are available to them, and also to take action. Your coach is really there to make more possibilities open for you. And so when we think about leadership coaching, why is this something you'd be interested in? So when it comes to leadership coaching, this is really something that's personalized support on your own goals. So you can build your presence and capacity in your new role as a leader. You can create better balance or boundaries with your work. So again, bringing in that personal with the professional. You can increase your confidence as a manager, clarify your vision for the organization, or strengthen relationships with other people within your organization or community. So these are a few examples of what some support may look like and some of the things that people come to coaching hoping to achieve. But these are, there are a number of different things that you can focus on. So one of the things that we found when it comes to coaching is that only 21.4% of nonprofit leaders have a very high degree of confidence in their leadership ability. And so when we think about the leaders of our organization, confidence is one of the things that really helps as our foundation to be able to present ourselves the way that we need to in order to do our jobs and to bring the people along with us in that journey. So what's the impact of leadership coaching for folks in this space or other social impact leaders? So one of the things that we discovered is that 94% of participants, so people who participated in coaching, reported that their overall confidence as a leader improved due to their coaching experience. So it's a really significant jump. And our organization, ACC, found that after 6 coaching sessions, the percentage of participants who felt that they were showing up as the leaders they wanted to be soared from 16% to almost 90%. So when we think about the impact of coaching, it's not necessarily something that you will, be in for a year and not see a lot of progress. We're actually seeing progress really quickly in these relationships, and the impact is really high. And I will turn it over to Adam to share a little bit about the difference between coaching and some of the other professions that you may have experienced who also do a lot of leadership development work.
Thanks. So as you all know, there are lots of places to get help. And part of what can be confusing is figuring out which is the right person at which time. So we're highlighting 4 different kinds of support professionals: coaches, therapists, consultants, and mentors. And we're going to go through and talk about the differences between them. But want to just note at the beginning that really, while we're talking about these as distinct categories, it's really more of a continuum, and there's overlap between these. So a coach, there might be a coach who acts somewhat more like a consultant. And so when we'll talk later about finding the right person for you, it's really important to find out about people's styles so you can make sure you're finding someone with the right match for you. Because in addition to there being overlap between these categories, there's also a lot of variation even within them. Coaching is a really broad category, as Jillian was saying. So you'll really want to get clear on what you want from it to make sure that the person who you want to work with has a style that matches well with that. So the first one I'll talk about is leadership coaches versus therapists. So both leadership coaches and therapists work with you to address personal challenges that you're facing. Both will help you to identify goals and paths to get there. Both will ask you challenging questions, and both will make you do most of the talking. One things that are different are therapists are licensed mental health professionals. So if you have an acute mental health issue, a therapist is definitely the right person to reach out to. Coaches typically focus on more of the work context than a therapist will. That also makes room for the personal in it. So it's not just talking about the organization. It's very much the intersection between the personal and the professional. And coaches don't need to be licensed, though many are trained and certified. And we'll talk about this later, but really recommend that coaches find that clients who want to work with a coach find someone who's licensed. Whether you find someone who's certified or not is more of a personal preference. But the training is important. So the next one is consultants. And I think this is another one where often there can be a lot of confusion. So both will help you to address organizational challenges. What's different is that consultants are much more in the business of giving advice and sort of handing over solutions and focusing less on your capacity to develop your own solutions moving forward. So it's a little bit more of the giving the fish as opposed to teaching to fish metaphor. I think, there are certainly lots of consultants who would take exception with that distinction. Again, these are sort of archetypes of the two, but coaches typically bring in more of the personal aspects of the organizational challenges. So rather than just looking at this as an organization and as a professional work environment, also figuring out what about you is showing up in the workplace. How are you showing up? How do you want to show up? How is that impacting the organization? And how is the organization impacting you? There's a huge focus on having clients develop their own solutions. Coaching really holds that the client is the expert and holds the creativity and resourcefulness to come up with solutions, but a coach can help you sort of bring that out and form that into clearer thoughts. And coaches provide more accountability support, so helping hold you accountable as you're going through the steps that you decide you want to take. And then the last one is coaches versus mentors. Both coaches and mentors may bring personal experience relevant to clients. That's almost always true in the case of a mentor. It's often true in the case of a coach, though many coaches are able to work with clients who they don't share personal experience with, depending on their approach. A couple things that are different are mentors, somewhat similar to consultants, often give advice and teach and may really lay out recommendations. Here's how I got to this place. So here are steps I recommend that you take. And coaches focus more, again, on asking powerful questions to help clients come up with their own answers. So those are just some sort of high-level differences between the different types of support professionals. Again, there's overlap, it's a continuum, but those are some of the biggest ones.
Great. So now that you have greater clarity on the role of coaching versus other types of professional support, let's dive into who leadership coaching is for. So having a sounding board, someone to ask powerful questions, and hold space for you to take time to pause, reflect, think, and plan, this can be incredibly powerful for anyone. But when thinking about leaders in particular who are navigating relationships across organizations, whether it's staff, the board, funders, external partners, having a coach to connect with in a non-judgmental space can be particularly transformational, as leaders have that space where they can share what's truly on their minds without worrying about needing to filter out parts of the conversation depending on the audience. And common times when leadership coaching might be helpful include when a leader is first stepping into a new role. So kind of having that sounding board, that source of support, stepping into that new role. So whether that's at an existing organization or a brand new organization for them, as well as leaders who've been in their roles. You know, maybe new challenges are coming up or the same challenges are coming up again and again, and you're in a place where you want to figure out how to do things differently. Perhaps exploring new opportunities, new goals, or even when the leader's feeling overwhelmed or at risk of burnout. Another common time for leaders to connect with coaching is when they're thinking about navigating their own transition. You know, they're thinking maybe several months or years down the line, they're ready to close out their leadership role. And how do they do that in a way that both honors their commitment and work to the organization, as well as honors their need for change? Another time is when clients are at a place where, you know, they're ready for a break. Maybe they're interested in taking a sabbatical, but need some support in navigating how do we get there? How do I get the organization in a place where that's possible? And on the sabbatical note, last fall, I actually worked with a client who was just coming back from their sabbatical. They'd been with their organization for over a decade. And during their sabbatical, they developed some healthier habits. And they were a little bit anxious about returning to the leadership role, thinking that, you know, it's pretty easy to fall back into old patterns. And so a lot of our coaching time together was really focused on solidifying and putting into practice the ways that they wanted to shift how they showed up as a leader and how they showed up for themselves. So really focusing on that as well, their own self-care, their own priorities outside of work. In this way, really creating an opportunity to do the role differently so that they could sustain in the role rather than continue on their previous path to burnout. And an important part of the coaching process is getting clear on the purpose of your coaching engagement. So you'll likely have a pretty clear sense as you head into coaching what it is that you want to work on. And then you and your coach will connect and really work to clarify that goal to make sure it's clear and forward-looking and action-oriented. So here you'll see several examples of different potential goal topics. And leadership coaching goals can really focus on anything that supports you in moving forward as a leader. Some specific examples also include, I want to learn how to effectively manage my new team, or I want to create and implement new strategies that will support my stress reduction so I can show up as the leader that I want to be. Or even more targeted, I want to engage my board more deeply with financial oversight and fundraising efforts. So again, coaching goals are clear, forward-looking, and action-oriented. So you have your coaching goal. What happens next? What actually happens in a coaching session? So while every coach has their own style and a coaching session will look different from one coach to another, you can generally expect that a coaching session will have a flow. It'll often start with a connection moment, whether that's a brief check-in or a mindfulness moment. For example, with my coaching clients, we'll often, to support the transition from what they were working on before to the coaching conversation, we'll take a brief pause, take a few slow breaths together. I'll ask them to think about if there's an intention that's coming to mind for the session. And then I'll ask, you know, a general question of, you know, what's gone well for you recently, or what's something that you're celebrating or navigating. So really getting them present in this space before we transition to the heart of the coaching conversation. And the heart of the coaching conversation is really focused on what is the goal for that particular time together. And so to gain clarity on that, The coach might ask a question like, what would you like to focus on today? Or what do you want to be different by the end of our time together? Then the conversation will continue. And as the coach, I'm really looking at how can I ask powerful questions that support moving the client forward with their goal. So yes, their overall larger coaching goal, as well as their focus for that particular session. We're creating space for idea generation, sharing, testing out different perspectives, as well as highlighting aha moments. And finally, coaching is action-oriented. So most sessions will close with a client creating a really clear action step to support them in moving forward with their goal. This is then followed by really exploring, are there different supports that they might need along the way in order to take action on their goal? What would be helpful in terms of accountability with moving forward with that goal? Do they want to add a reminder to their calendar? Do they want to check in with me on the next session? Is there a colleague they can check in on? So that's a really important part of just ensuring that the coaching process is supporting the client in moving forward.
So as you listen to what we're sharing and kind of get a picture in your head of what coaching is, or maybe if you've had coaching, you're reflecting back on your experiences, you might be asking yourself, am I ready for coaching? Am I ready to make the most of it and get the most out of it? So you'll see here a few statements that I'll share, and also you can reflect on for yourself to see if these feel true for you. So one is, I'm ready to get clear on my goals and next steps. So this might be a time where you're really looking for clarity, you're looking to set some aspirations, and your coach is really there to help you do that. The second is, I'm open to new ideas and ways of doing things to facilitate positive change or growth. Your coach's role is really to make the opportunity to open up possibilities for you, to help challenge you, to give you new ways of thinking about things, new ways of viewing things, so that you can have the opportunity to take different action. The third is, I'm prepared to dedicate time to make coaching work, including dedicated time to sessions and work between sessions. So as we shared, your coach's goal is not necessarily to give you advice, to tell you what to do, or to take control of the process of you achieving your goals. Your coach is there to support you. And so the hope is that whatever conclusions, ahas, ideas, or thoughts that you come to in the session are things that you're going to start implementing and practicing outside of the session. So it does take work beyond the time that you're with your coach. The fourth is, I'm interested in personalized accountability support. And so one of the things we'll talk about later is that when it comes to accountability, having someone that you're accountable to really helps to increase your likelihood of achieving your goals. So your coach supports you to do that. And lastly, I understand that coaching is not advice giving, rather it is a supported space for transformation. So something we've spoken to a little bit, but wanted to underscore that point too. Another thing you might be considering is whether or not your organization is ready to support you in your desire to participate in coaching. So here are a few statements to consider and see if this is something that feels true for your organization. So the first is, my board and leadership staff or supervisor are supportive of me engaging in coaching. It's always great to have the support of those around you, the people who manage you, or the people who you're responsible to. This can really help increase that accountability. So you not only have your coach, but you have a community that is really supportive of you as well. The second is, the organization has grown significantly or is experiencing new challenges and opportunities, or a change in strategy, leadership, or external conditions. So when we're in change processes, it can feel extremely unsettling sometimes, and you feel like you're in a space of unknown, there are new things happening. It's always helpful to have someone or a community to help guide you through those experiences and to help you navigate them so that you can really step into your leadership amidst the change. The third is, the organization sees value in providing me with leadership development opportunities. So again, this goes back to that concept of support, having that community around you and making sure that you have those folks who are backing you. And the last here says, the organization will support me in dedicating time to the coaching process. So of course, you'll have to make time for the individualized sessions. It may mean that there is work that you're doing outside of those sessions. And it also might mean that there are new practices or things that you're trying out. Having an organization and a team that is supportive of you testing these things out, of you taking time to, let's say one of the conclusions you come to is that you need to do more networking, or that you need to connect with other folks in your organization. Having your organization support you and dedicating time to those things is really supportive of your coaching relationship. We also want to give you some tips on what to look for in a coach. So how do you know who's going to be a good person for you? Who's going to help you really achieve those aspirations that you have? So you're going to want to look for someone who has completed professional coach training of some sort. Not all coaches have that formal training, but it's helpful to have someone who does have some background in those techniques. You may want to look for someone who has strong experience in your sector, or experience in another sector that you're particularly interested in. And you may want to look for someone who has identities that either overlap yours or that make you feel more comfortable when it comes to sharing those challenges that you have and the goals that you have. So really what it comes down to, I think, is this last point, which is you want to find someone who you feel comfortable with. Most coaches will give you an opportunity to have an intro session. You might meet for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or some folks will do a full 60 minutes, but just an opportunity to see if you all feel like a good fit. Does this feel like someone I can really share my thoughts with? And do I see an opportunity to learn from this person, or to have this person guide me in my own learning and growth journey?
Okay, so now decided you want to find a coach, but you don't know how. So how can you connect with a coach? There's several different places to find one. First is peer recommendations. Like with everything else, it's always good to ask the people you know who they work with. You may be part of some nonprofit networks or associations and can reach out to either the hosts of those organizations or, again, other peers through them to see if they have any recommendations. There are several online resources that you can use. There's sort of an unlimited number of online resources. Three we would highlight are LinkedIn, a site called Numi, and another one called BetterUp. Also, the International Coaching Federation has a DC chapter, and they have a list as well. And lastly, I'll just mention the Access Coaching Collective, who we're with. We'll have our contact information at the end, and we're happy to help as well in terms of connecting you with a coach. And then we've talked about this some, but in terms of choosing one, would always recommend reviewing past client profiles and testimonials. Is what they're saying aligned with what you're looking for? Schedule an intro conversation. Jillian mentioned this, but it's really important to have a first call, and not just to go off their description. And almost all coaches will do this first session for free, just to hear about how they coach, their style, and to see if you click. And as Jillian said, is this someone who can support you? And also, sometimes is this someone you feel like can challenge you, not just someone that you're comfortable with, but can push you forward. And ultimately, it's a personal choice. The person who's a great coach for you might not be the best coach for someone else. And again, that's why it's really important to talk to them yourself and see what you think will work for you. Nuts and bolts. Okay, so how much does it cost? So there's a huge range in cost. Typically, it's about $150 to $350 a session. Some folks charge way more than that. Sometimes you can find a coach who charges less, particularly if it's someone who's new to coaching. They may have been trained and all of that, but they're still building up their practice. But again, that's a huge range. It also depends on how many sessions you have and how frequent the sessions are. So commonly sessions are weekly or bi-weekly, not always. And commonly sessions are 45 to 60 minutes. But again, these are things you'll want to check with the coaches that you're talking to. And then where can the money come from? So often or sometimes organizations have some professional development budget, and this is a place that you could use some of that for. You can ask current funders to add to an existing grant to support coaching. You can build it into a future grant proposal. You can request additional funds from your board or use existing funds that haven't been allocated that are below the board request threshold. And some folks use a mix of personal funds and organizational funds because ultimately it is a mix of sort of personal and organizational benefit. If you are talking to funders or your board, really important to highlight the benefits of coaching. And several that I would call out are that coaching can be really good for retention, for improving morale and improving performance. Those are typically things that resonate with funders and boards. And also that it can be a way to help address burnout, which is also a problem that I think more and more funders and boards are taking seriously. So highlighting the benefits is really important, and not just assuming that boards or funders will automatically know how valuable coaching can be. You can also think about who else in your organization might benefit from coaching. Some folks, some characteristics to think about. Are there leaders behind you in the organization who are really experiencing new challenges or opportunities, including people moving into new leadership roles, and you want to make sure that they've got confidence and support to be able to step into that new role? High performers who you want to invest in. Sometimes you'll see someone on your team who's really a star, and you want to figure out how to keep investing in their leadership. And often there are statistics that show that people who are have organizations who invest in coaching for them feel really invested in turn in the organization. Potential high performers, here's somebody who I think really could step into this role more, but there's something getting in their way and maybe a coach could help them. And sometimes there are people who need to think about whether the organization or the position is the right fit for them. That's a tough set of questions often, and a coach can really help someone navigate those questions.
Thanks, Adam. And now we are thrilled to welcome two former Access Coaching Collective clients to the call. I'm excited to introduce Diana Ortiz, the president and CEO of Doorways, as well as Andrew Lee, the artistic and executive director of the DC Strings Workshop. So we are thrilled to have you both here today, and I'm going to stop screen share. And if Andrew is here, I'd love to start with asking you a few questions.
Sure. Hey, everybody.
Wonderful. Great to be with you. Thanks for joining. And maybe just to start, if you could share just a little bit more about yourself and, beyond kind of your title.
Absolutely. So Andrew Lee, I'm a musician, arts administrator. I play piano and violin. I love music and started DC Strings 7 years ago to make sure that everyone loves music. No, just to bring more opportunities to kids and opportunities for local musicians to perform. We host several ensembles, orchestras, perform at embassies, Kennedy Center, and have a number of programs in DC public and charter schools throughout the region.
Thanks, Andrew. It's great to be with you today. Andrew was a coaching client as a part of a fall cohort just this past fall. And so I'd love to ask you a few questions about your experience, what coaching was like for you. And first, just what was the experience like as a client for you?
It really helped me to focus a lot more. So I didn't realize how busy I was every day with, the life of trying to run a nonprofit in the city and organizing musicians and teachers and plans, and really to be a lot more clear on my expectations with staff and the board was a really big learning that came out of it. Also reframing how I was approaching certain situations. I was a bit stuck on, let's say, a board member and expectations around that or commitment, and being able to approach it a different way with the same ask or the same outcome, and maybe get rid of some of the scar tissue or some of the hangups that we had in previous interactions or conversations.
Thank you for sharing that. And then to kind of back up a little, what was your coaching goal, if you don't mind sharing, and what was the process like in terms of working on that particular goal?
So the big goal for me was building capacity around some of my hang up areas. Because if something wasn't happening the way I want, I was like, oh, I'll just do it, no problem. But that only works for how long, right? Doesn't really work. Not a sustainable approach. So it was really getting more clear on like the key areas of support that I needed to be able to share with board and eventually build out more with staff, primarily around some of the day-to-day logistics and operations, so I can focus more on development and fundraising and business sales opportunities, as opposed to curriculum development and dropping off instruments and all of the things that can tend to weigh down a community arts program.
That's great. So really focus on the bigger picture and how to get a little bit more out of the weeds.
That's right.
And then I'm curious if you remember any specific tools or strategies or kind of supports that were part of the coaching process that supported you with that.
There was a kind of goal framework that was really helpful. There were I started realizing that in terms of like check-ins and expectations, just like I said, that for me was the biggest learning. It's like, all right, every day there's 200 things to do. Like, are there really 200 things to do? Or like, do you just need more support around working with your team, or saying, you know what, why are we doing 200 things? Maybe we don't have to do 200 things. Like, are you having more time in your day to think? Like, who does that? Apparently, most people. So to process and reflect and really team build and build support for some of the goals.
I think you've already answered part of this next question, but I'm curious if more comes to mind, is if you can think like, what's different since you first started coaching? What's the impact been for you?
I would say profound, because I tend to just go and run and we can do this and we can do that. And it's more like, actually, just because you can doesn't mean you should, or at what cost. And really making sure there's more framework and structure around some of our programs and some of the things we're doing. We're like, but the community needs this, the kids need this, we need to do this. And the tension of that versus resources and capacity and all the things that keep us all up at night, right? So for me, the big learning is we can actually say no, and it might be good to say no, and or to build more support to get to yes.
That's huge. Thanks for sharing that. And then I'm curious, as you know, we're here with a room full of people. Some have participated in coaching and others haven't. Do you have any advice for people who are interested in exploring starting coaching?
To really prioritize it in terms of in not just the time with your coach, but the mental time to reflect and focus on the learnings, to be clear on some goals, maybe not like 10 or 15 goals. Maybe it's just 2 or 3 things, like framing how um, you handle your day, like a typical day, or the things that tend to be pain points. That would be the big learning. And I appreciate the cohort and being able to like communicate with other folks in coaching. I think that's also helpful.
That's great. And then just kind of final question, is there anything else that comes to mind related to your coaching experience that you think would be able to share with people?
I mean, it's really investing in yourself. I'm not trying to be cliche, but I know we're all very busy and stressed out all the time in various ways. And it's helpful. It's I don't know, very therapeutic to take some time, mindfulness and all of this, all the meditative practices. I'm so there now. So do it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I know you have to hop off in a bit, but depending on timing, there may be an opportunity to ask questions of Andrew directly right after our next client conversation. Andrew, thank you so much for joining. It's been wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for this space.
And I'll pass it over to Jillian.
Thank you. So I have the pleasure of introducing Diana Ortiz, who was also a client of Access Coaching Collective. And I'm super excited to hear about your experience as a coachee and hear about your goals and all of that. So this is my first time meeting you, but I think your coach is on the call. So it's very exciting to be able to hear about your experience. And for those on the call, you'll be able to kind of have the opportunity to potentially ask both folks what that experience was like. So Diana, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and also just what your experience was like with coaching?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And hi, Eloise. As you know, my name is Diana Ortiz. I'm the CEO of a nonprofit organization that works just, neighboring with DC in Arlington County. We're a crisis response nonprofit, so we support domestic and sexual violence survivors. So there's 24/7 demand and need and work happening. I'm a first generation immigrant and Latina and a mom of 3 young kids. So very, busy life in all aspects, and again, like incredibly helpful to being a client and like really having that firsthand experience of coaching. I'm the trained mental health therapist, so believe it or not, this was the first time that I actually had an opportunity to be in a different role and experience coaching, and like some of those differences that you were talking previously about.
Awesome. That's amazing. I think it underscores the feeling that we don't often take that time for ourselves, especially for those of us in helping roles. So it's great to hear that from you. Yeah, if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear, what was your coaching goal, and were there any strategies or tools that were helpful for you in achieving that?
Yeah, so I work on like some of like the wording of my goal, but like the general my general task was like really finding that, like Andrew talked about that, like sustainability and how to like, do it all and integrate the different aspects. So it was really like how to like integrate my daily steps, the little things that happen on a day-to-day with like that long-term vision, and how to make, life sustainable. I also started coaching when I was recovering from a physical injury. So, it's always something that I would tell my peers and colleagues is like, sometimes balance, comes out in like different places. So as I was working on balance with my physical injury recovery, I was also working on balance with Eloise and during my coaching.
That's beautiful. I love the parallel between both your physical experience as well as, your, experience in life, whether that's kind of mental, emotional. But I love how it sounds so integrated for you. Can you share a little bit about what impact coaching had for you?
I think I'm gonna just, reference Andrew, because some of the things that you said really resonated with me. It's very hard. It's very hard for me to like open space in my calendar to think, to process, but it was very much more, I'm used to like block time for a meeting. So just having that time on my calendar, that it was the time to like have my coaching session, was something that I was able to like, be okay with that. And again, like that was just something that I didn't allow myself to do in the past, just by like, I'm gonna think and reflect. But I could like schedule a time to like meet with Eloise and like really do that during that time, with the accountability of now having something tangible after the meeting, after that session.
That's really beautiful. It sounds like some of what you gained was a lot of clarity as well, and just being able to understand, this is the change I want to make. This is how I want to be intentional here. So I'm curious, for the folks on the call, if you have any advice for people who are thinking about coaching or interested in it, or if there are any thoughts that you have about how to make the most of coaching.
I think again, we get as much as we put into, right, effort in like the different projects. And I think that this is one of these statements that it cannot be like, truer for coaching, just being able to be candid and like really, again, like, like the challenging aspect, finding someone that is resonating, that intentionality. I think that it plays a big role in like what I got out of the sessions, and like what I got out of the process.
So, is there anything else that you think would be helpful to share that folks on the call may want to know, or anything else that comes to mind for you when it comes to thinking about your experience with coaching?
I think that, in in times where like things are always kind of busy and priorities are sometimes hard to again pick and choose. It was very good. It was very helpful again to have that space. And I think that I needed the justification of why it was important for me. And again, sometimes this is, I don't know if it's gender specific or role specific, but it's, like, why would a nonprofit leader that, it's there, like, would spend money or spend time doing things? And again, just, as doctors need, get sick and need to go to the doctors, leaders also need that space to plan and process and get that clarity. So if anyone is just looking for justification, I would say that that was probably like the hardest step, just to like say, okay, this is something that I really need, and I can have beautiful conversations with my staff. I can have excellent conversations with my board, but some of those have implicit dynamics that I didn't have to like think about, or how to present things during the coaching session. So it's really kind of take some of those filters out.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for sharing your experiences with coaching. And we're really excited to, I guess at this point, looking at Eloise and Adam, but to open it up to questions. So for folks on the call, would love to give you an opportunity to ask myself, ask Adam, Eloise, ask Andrew, ask Diana. Are there any questions that you have about coaching or what you just heard from our two guests?
And feel free to either raise your hand or just to put it in the chat. Either is fine.
Are we able to talk?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I wanted to say thank you. My first question is congratulations on you all being able to be in the place of leadership and to be able to see that transition of developing this platform, to be able to share with us all of the lessons, experience, and learning that comes with being a leader. It almost gave me insight of future development just in this position that I've been at my organization. I'm exec director of a small but instrumental nonprofit called Sowing Opportunities Never Ending. I've been the exec director now going on like almost like 13 years to be exact. And so as I develop this organization, though it's not something that I see myself getting tired of just yet, I do am thankful to hear and to see how being a part of someone else's organization that you were able to create and develop this platform. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Also see a question in the chat. I think this is from Emily. So Andrew, I believe you mentioned that you were part of a cohort. Can you share a little bit about how that group or that cohort formed?
There were a couple other opportunities through Crimson Bridge, so it was through that. But in general, I've been a part of the Spur Local BIPOC group, different affinity groups, and we meet weekly or bi-weekly and talk about issues as EDs that we face. Some of it is commiserating, but a lot of it is really helpful. And through that space, learning that a lot of other people are going through coaching, or we're all dealing with the same things, grant cycles, funding cycles, staff challenges, board challenges, trying to reach our audience, our target populations in new ways. So I was like, oh, wow, we're all dealing with the same stuff. We're not alone. Go figure.
Yeah, and I think one thing that brings up, and it speaks to another question that was in the chat, is that, as we were talking about different forms, there is a difference between one-on-one coaching and also group coaching or team coaching. And just like with everything else, there are benefits to both, and it's great. It sounds like, Andrew, you were able to have some of each, and I think that that's really ideal. The one-on-one space is particularly good for not having, I mean, as Deanna mentioned, not having to have any filters and really being able to share without regard for, how these things might be heard by others in the group. And groups can be really good for both just recognizing that these challenges are shared, but also co-coaching each other and learning from each other how people have dealt with it. So there are benefits to both. And so Jillian, you asked about could a trio of, a team and an organization do this as a group? And the answer is absolutely. I think, one question that I would put to you is whether you're really working on sort of the dynamics between the three of you, in which case I think doing it as a team can work really well. If it's like sort of how you're showing up in this group or how you're navigating it, I think doing it as an individual might be a better fit. I don't know if Eloise or Jillian, if you'd speak to that differently, but that's sort of my initial response to that as a question. Eloise, Jillian, anything you'd add?
A trio of us, and so I'm an old hand, but I could use leadership skills too. And then there are these two. We have a brand new artistic director who's very young and a brand new general manager that's very young, and everything is about their leadership. So I don't know this, and we do it sort of collaboratively. So it's just interesting. It's interesting, like challenge. So we can explore both. Thanks.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd add, given that context, is that another format we've seen as well is that sometimes folks will do the group coaching and then also make time for individual coaching in between group sessions. So there may be some things that you all want to work on as a team, and there may be things that you want to work on individually, and you can kind of use both spaces to inform the other.
And then both Christine and Angela asked questions sort of about the time involved. So sessions are typically 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the coach. The frequency is really up to you and the coach. Like personally, I do it every other week. I know some people do it weekly. And so I think it's trying to balance, Jillian mentioned that you need to do work in between the sessions and try things out. And so it's trying to balance sort of having some space in between the sessions to do these things, but also not so much space that you lose momentum. So I'd say that is sort of roughly how often. And in terms of how many sessions, typically it starts with somewhere in the 4 to 8 range, but it can go much longer. And I think it depends somewhat on, well, sometimes on resources, but also on whether you're really trying to tackle something that's concrete and specific, or whether this is sort of a longer journey that you want support and accountability on. So I would say 4 to 8 is sort of a good starting point, and then can go from there.
And then I'm curious if Andrew or Diana have more to add in terms of, yes, there's the amount of time you spend in session with coaching, but as a client, like, was there amount of time you would set aside per week to do the coaching work or your action steps, or did it vary from week to week? Just if there's more that you can kind of paint around that.
I mean, I had very specific action items that I wanted to work on. So if I wanted to mobilize a team or like have a specific courageous conversation with someone, so like I would just add a couple of reminders. Again, I live by the calendar just to like do that. So by my next session, I knew that, again, that accountability piece was very helpful. I found that very easy to integrate into, again, my daily, my schedule. So I would say it depends on like some of those goals and like skills that we might be practicing.
It's a great point. Yeah, I've tried to find a couple hours a week. I'd probably say like 2 to 4 hours a week to kind of process and unpack some of the learnings and figure out how I could implement things. My coach was pretty available, like during the week. Sometimes he would ask me about a strategy or how I would approach something, or goals for a conversation, or goals for, a partnership or something. And I would send the framework and get feedback before or outside of our coaching section, which was pretty helpful. So we were really unpacking the more difficult parts for me in our coaching.
Thank you both.
I believe we will
Cool.
also have, oh yeah, go ahead, Adam.
No, go ahead, John.
Oh no, I was gonna say we have some more time to also ask some questions in a smaller discussion group as well. So if you're thinking about a question or you're kind of mulling over whether or not this feels like a good fit, you'll have some more time and we can come back. But I don't know if that cut off your point, Adam.
Are your sessions virtual or in person?
Great question. So most sessions will take place virtually. I think that's what most of our clients have seen, and many coaches will do that. It allows space for you to be able to work with a coach who may not be in your vicinity, but also still fits your needs. I believe there are some coaches who may do so in person, but I think most of the ones, especially with ACC, are ones that you'll expect to see virtually. But Eloise and Adam, let me know if you have other things you'd like to add to that.
No, I think that's right. And it is one small thing that can help with the time involved, because at least you don't also have time to get where you need to go for it. So it's one small benefit.
Do you also give information on funders? If you're looking for someone to fund, do you normally would have some information like that you would recommend?
In terms of someone to go to for funding for coaching?
Yes.
Yes, I think what we've seen kind of work most often is if clients already have a relationship with a funder who is already funding them, and that funder is invested in their success and asking, this is something that would really support me and my leadership and my sustainability in this role. Would you consider adding X amount more so that I could do this in the coming year? So that's, I think, really the best place to start. And Adam and Jillian, if you have more to add on that, that's great too. Great. Well, wonderful questions, everyone. Thank you. And a huge thank you to Andrew Lee and Diana Ortiz. We are so grateful for your time, for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us and share your perspectives. It's an honor to be with you. So thank you. Thank you. Feel free to stay on or hop off. And we're going to continue with next steps from here. So thank you again.
Thanks,
So
everyone.
what we're going to do is have David Markey, our deputy director, to kind of, sum things up for us and tell us what the next steps are. But again, just wanted to say thank you from the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities for everybody to come on and kind of participate with us. So David, I know you'd like to take it from this point on.
Thank you, Melvin. Actually, we have just a little bit more to share, and then we're going to invite David on. But
Okay.
I was just welcoming and thanking our wonderful clients. So we have just a brief coaching demo to bring coaching more to life to share.
Okay.
So I'll share
Yes.
that now, and then we'll get to David right after, or shortly thereafter.
And this is about a 5-minute clip, right?
This is about a 5-minute clip. So now you've heard about what happens in leadership coaching, had an opportunity to connect directly with clients who've been a part of leadership coaching. And we really want you to have a deeper understanding. What does a coaching conversation actually look like? What happens in coaching? So we're going to share a brief excerpt from the executive coaching podcast called Coaching Real Leaders, from their episode, How Do I Get Results Without Feeling Burned Out? And this is with executive coach Muriel Wilkins, and she's speaking with a client, Ben. And Ben is in a place where he is in a new position, and he's feeling overwhelmed, he's overworking, he feels like he's on the path to burnout. So he's talking with his coach about, how do I work less? How do I continue through this job and this new leadership role in a way that feels like a better balance for me, my life, my family? And so we're gonna jump in the middle of this, and the coach is gonna be sharing a brief overview of some of the thoughts that Ben has shared along the way. And so just one moment while I pull up the clip.
Defining best. So if the script of I need to stay 2 steps ahead of everyone in order to succeed, and that means that I need to work 11 hours a day, etc. What does the script need to be in order to now achieve what I'm now defining as success, which is I work an average of 10 hours a day and I don't feel as exhausted.
Okay.
And I understand fully what I'm sensing is a little bit of reticence to letting go of, the mantra that has gotten you to where you are today. I understand. And in reality, you don't have to let it go with me. We're just exploring. We're just, I promise you, it's right there after we finish this coaching meeting. If you want, you can pick it right back up and we will live our merry lives, right?
Yeah.
But you will be working 11 hours a day. I promise you that. That's the only thing I know. So all I'm asking is, let's imagine that you don't pick it back up. And that now you're like, I'm going to work average 10 hours a day. And when I come home, I'm going to have dinner with my wife. I'm not going to check email. I might check it for 20 minutes max every night. And that's it. What would you need to tell yourself in order to be able to do that?
Can I say there are days that I would like to find the person that invented email and I would like to shoot them in their pinky toe? Because in order to do that, right, one of the things that I need to do is I need to block time and be unavailable where I sit and stay focused on doing nothing but email for X number of whatever's a day. And that's one of the things that makes me feel like I'm losing is if I end up with more emails in my inbox at the end of the day than I had at the beginning of the day, then I feel like I've lost. And that happens daily.
And who made that rule up?
Me. I did.
I mean, Ben, like you are set. Let me tell you something. The game that you have set up and the rules, the rules that you've implemented, have you set them up in any way that you can win?
Yes.
How?
I believe that I have, and in my heart of hearts, I believe that if I were to do nothing different, 6 months from now, it would be hard, but I would be better than I am at it today. I guess the question is that really how I want to be living 6 months from now, right? 6 months from now, it might be 10 and a half hours a day and still coming home and doing something. You know what I mean? I don't know how to put edges around that, but
I'm going to tell you what I think would happen 6 months from now. I think you would be a little bit more comfortable with it. I think you'd be more comfortable with the fatigue that you feel now.
That's a fair point.
It's like I had a hip injury and I remember going to the doctor and the doctor basically said, stop running. And I was like, what? And he was like, just stop running. I was like, okay, because I hurt that bad, right? So I stopped running. About a month and a half later, all my running friends were like, well, how do you feel? How do you feel? And I'm like, I feel great. And they said, oh, great, you can start running again. I said, no. The reason I feel great is because I stopped running, right? If I start running again, the pain's going to come back.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize how bad I felt until I stopped running. The source of the pain wasn't there anymore. And so what I'm saying is you get comfortable. It's not that the source of the pain goes away. It's that you get comfortable with it. It becomes normalized.
One of the things that I always tell my team is it doesn't get any easier. but you get smarter or better. It's this kind of the same thing, right? You get more comfortable with it. It's not any easier.
Mhm.
You just know how to handle it with more of a smile than a grimace or a frown.
Right. And I think the question is this something that you want to be comfortable with?
Mhm.
You know, you came into this conversation saying, I want to be able to figure out how to do my job without feeling so drained. And so, is it that you want to change what is the source of you feeling drained, which, from what we've talked about, is really this whole notion of you literally trying to beat yourself every day and being 2 steps ahead of yourself, right? Of what you were yesterday. Or are you going to say, nope, I don't want to be comfortable with that level of energy draining, and therefore I need to change or not have that be my source. And the source is the expectations that you have set on yourself.
How do you do that?
How do you do it?
How do you become comfortable with not striving as hard? How do you become comfortable with not trying to beat your previous personal best? How do you become comfortable with not necessarily achieving the best?
Well, how do you become comfortable with anything?
You keep doing it.
Yeah, practice.
Well, thank you all for indulging us in that clip. Hopefully, it helped to paint a clearer picture of what coaching looks like in the middle of a session. We're going to transition back to our presentation. I'm going to pass it to Jillian.
Thank you so much. We were, as a team, actually, we were talking about this clip, one, just because it feels so relatable. You know, who among us is not struggling with some kind of exhaustion at some point in life, or, you know, a persistent issue that, you know, we could use a fresh set of eyes on. So one of the things we also wanted to name here is that the coach, Muriel Wilkins, is, you know, she shares a lot in this conversation. And so when you're working with a coach, you may or may not have someone who shares as much. They may be more in the position of asking you questions, which I think she did a lot of in this clip, but wanted to add that caveat as well. And as you kind of take this experience in, we wanted to give you the opportunity to imagine yourself in Ben's shoes. Ben was the client. Imagine yourself in Ben's shoes and imagine that you have a coach who you have selected who feels like a really great partner for you. And so, you know, maybe jot this down or just reflect on it in your mind, draw a picture, whatever comes naturally to you. But we want you to reflect on these 2 questions. So the first is, what is a leadership challenge that you are facing right now? Something that feels present for you, something that has, you know, been on your mind that you would love to see shifts or changes in. And as you make that reflection and take the time to think about that, we also want you to answer for yourself, what might your coaching goal be if you started today? So again, you're imagining yourself in Ben's shoes, you've got your coach. And so I'll give you a minute to reflect on these 2 questions, and then we'll have some time to unpack those a little bit and also to ask any more questions that came up for you as you listen to that clip and as you think about coaching. So I'll give you about a minute or so to reflect. Take another 10 seconds or so and get that thought of the leadership challenge and your coaching goal really clear for you in your mind. All right. And we will transition with that image fresh in your mind, and we'll transition into some smaller discussion groups. So myself, Eloise, and Adam will each be in one of the groups. We'll have an opportunity for you all to share your leadership challenge and your possible coaching goal. We can kind of workshop it and talk about what that could look like for you. And you also have the opportunity to connect with each one of us to ask any questions about coaching or about your thoughts on getting started, or other folks you might imagine it for. So yeah, I think that's it.
Well, welcome back, everyone. As always happens in these, someone gets cut off talking at the end of it, but fortunately in our group, at least it was me, mostly just saying thanks to everybody. So I hope those conversations were helpful. And if any of you feel comfortable in this larger group sharing your goal or anything that came up for you in the conversation, please feel free to either put it in your chat or raise your virtual hand. Would love to hear what came up for folks. Okay, well, it sounds like in one of the groups, there's actually talk about forming a group. It's exciting.
I'll speak on behalf of my group really quickly, but just and if each of you want to speak, I invite you to. But I think one of the things that we found was that there was a lot of overlap in some of the goals that folks were exploring and the challenges that they were experiencing. And even underneath what the surface level challenge was, there was even some overlap of just like, what are the skills that we all need to build in order to achieve those goals? So I don't know if any of you all want to speak to that. Gillian, I think I might have seen you go off mute.
Let me find you all again. As a group, we of course are, we have, I think all the organizations, of course, need money. And that's a separate, but the real core to, the thing that we had synergy about is being able to define what we need and being able to ask. Asking for money as artists is really hard. And you have to ask it at so many different levels to so many different people. And it is a constant challenge to do that. And that's a leadership skill, whether it's money or anything else that you need. Learning to ask what you need is hard.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure many people can relate to that on this call.
Noticing that we are coming quickly up to time, wanted to make sure we gave David a chance to talk about an exciting potential opportunity coming up through the commission. So David, if I can throw it to you.
Thanks so much, Adam. And thanks to Eloise and Gillian and to Andrew and Diana for sharing their experience. I'll be very transparent. I know I was sort of working with you guys and putting the workshop together, and I didn't give much thought about how I would receive the workshop, but it really resonated with me. It's been a minute, probably 3 years since I did coaching myself. And even now more so than ever, I really understand the value of participation. We live in a culture of urgency. Everything is urgent. Everything is high stakes and high importance. And so it's really, really important that we are intentional about carving out time to ensure that we are centered and unstressed as possible. And so one of the goals of the agency is not only to provide very necessary funding to our community, but we also want to provide opportunities beyond the dollars to move beyond the traditional transactional nature of grant making. And so this coaching opportunity is one way in which we would like to support So our goal is to create a cohort of folks who would participate in coaching later this summer. And the program would be underwritten by the Arts Commission. Back to Vera's question about, how do you find funding for this? Well, we will not ask you to dig into your pocket or the coffers of your organization to fund it, because we really see the value that you bring to the work of your organization and to the larger community. Our hope is to push out a sort of a readiness survey later this week, just so you can answer some of the questions that popped up in an earlier slide about being coaching ready. I think the first time I did coaching, I wasn't quite coaching ready. So I think it's important for, as you engage with that survey to really be transparent, because hopefully the opportunity will come up again after this first cohort. So I will send that survey out to everyone. I think we're planning on asking folks to get it back to us by May 15th. And then the hope is that because procurement in DC government takes a minute, the hope would be that we would have a sort of a window of time, July through September, where we would, team you up with coaches and you would engage in a 6-week or a 6-session coaching process. So anything else, Adam, from me or, yep, there you go.
David, thank you so much. That's really exciting. And what a wonderful note to end on. Before we formally close, we, wouldn't be a good coaching conversation if we didn't end with action steps. And so what we're going to each ask of each of you is, if you are interested in coaching, what is a really small first step action that you can take to support you moving forward with coaching? And maybe that's, if you're interested in the potential coaching opportunity through the commission, maybe that's committing to completing the interest form that David's going to send out later this week. Or maybe it's writing down a draft coaching goal or sharing what you're looking for in a coach with a colleague or friend. So take just a couple of seconds here to reflect, and is something coming to mind? And if you'd like, you can drop it in the chat. That can be another kind of helpful thing in terms of really formalizing your taking action. And I see some people writing. And then on a related note, accountability. So, most coaching sessions will end with, what are you taking action on? What support or resources do you need to support you in getting there? And what would be helpful in terms of accountability and making sure that you actually take this action step? And there's great research that shows that even just having a goal makes it 10% more likely that you're going to follow through. And then if you commit to someone else, you're 65% more likely to complete that goal. And then this is where I think the data is really interesting. Having regular, consistent check-ins on that goal with someone consistently, 95% more likely to complete. And so that's what we were closing with. What will support you in taking action? How can you support yourself in moving forward with this goal around coaching? And what is something that would support you in being accountable to taking action? And Jillian and Adam, if there are things in the chat I don't have access to right now, please feel free to share, or given time, I think I'll move on. And then
we have a couple great goals. Thank you very much for sharing them. Eloise, if you want to just go to the last slide, the very last slide. Just want to thank everyone for coming today. Time always comes to an end quickly. So thanks so much for being here. If you have any questions, Eloise and my contact information is here, as is our website, and we can also connect you to Jillian if you have a question specifically for her. And you have the contact information of the commission, I'm sure, if you have questions for them. So thanks so much for being here, and look forward to reconnecting down the road.
Thank you all so much. It was an absolute pleasure, and we hope you get connected to coaching soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eloise, Adam, and Jillian, do you want to stay on for a couple of minutes, or do you have a couple of minutes to stay on?
Yeah,
Thanks.
That sounds great.
Right. So David, do you want to end everything up for us?
Yeah, so I think we're good. I think we can turn off the recording. I think every